November 19th, 1942. The frozen steppes outside Stalingrad, Soviet Union. The wind howls across the endless plains like a wounded beast, whipping snow into blinding sheets that sting like shrapnel. You can hear it first. The low rumble of T-34 tanks grinding forward, their diesel engines coughing through the muck. Treads chewing up the earth that's already turned to iron under the early winter freeze. In the distance, artillery thunders, a deep, guttural roar that shakes the ground, sending vibrations up through your boots. Then comes the chatter of machine guns, sporadic at first, like angry hornets building to a frenzy as Soviet infantry surges from the gullies. Inside the command dugout of the German Sixth Army, the air is thick with the smell of damp wool, cigarette smoke, and unwashed men. General Friedrich Paulus, his face gaunt under the flicker of a kerosene lamp, leans over a map table scarred by cigarette burns and coffee rings. His uniform hangs loose on a frame that shed pounds since the summer push toward the Volga. Around him, aides scribble notes, their breath fogging in the chill that seeps through the earthen walls. The radio crackles to life, a voice from the front lines cutting through the static. Soviet armor breaking through at Kalach, flanking maneuvers on both sides, request immediate support. Paulus straightens, his eyes narrowing. The Sixth Army, over 250, 0 strong, has been bled dry in the rubble of Stalingrad for months. House-to-house fighting, where every street is a graveyard, every basement a trap. They've pushed to the Volga's edge, but at a cost that gnaws at the soul. Tens of thousands dead or wounded, supplies trickling in by air over contested skies. Now this, reports from the flanks. Romanian and Italian divisions crumbling under the Red Army's hammer blow. Operation Uranus, the Soviets call it, though the Germans don't know the name yet. They feel it, though, the earth trembling as if the steppe itself is rebelling. "Get me Berlin," Paulus snaps, his voice steady but edged with the fatigue of a man who's seen too many telegrams marked KIA. An aide nods, twisting dials on the Enigma-encrypted radio. The connection hisses, then clears. On the other end, in the Wolf's Lair bunker deep in East Prussia, Adolf Hitler is mid-rant about the fanatical Bolsheviks, his aides, Keitel, Jodl, Goering, huddled like courtiers. The Führer's voice booms through the speaker, distorted but unmistakable. The flanks are held by our allies. They will not break. Paulus holds Stalingrad at all costs. It is the gateway to the Caucasus oil. Victory is within grasp. Paulus hesitates, glancing at his chief of staff, General Arthur Schmidt, whose mustache twitches with unspoken doubt. The map shows the danger clear as day. The Sixth Army's wings extended too far, reliant on under-equipped Axis satellites to guard the open plains. Soviet General Georgy Zhukov has massed over 1 million men, 1,000 tanks, hidden in the vastness no one thought could hide such force. But Hitler sees only the prize, the city named for Stalin, a symbol to crush. Mein Führer, Paulus ventures. The situation is fluid, permission to withdraw the flanks and consolidate. The line goes silent, save for the Führer's heavy breathing. Then, the explosion. "Withdraw? Nonsense. Any retreat is defeatism. The Luftwaffe will supply you. Goering has assured me 100 tons a day, if needed." Reichsmarshal Hermann Goering, bloated and overconfident, chimes in from the background, his voice slurred with optimism. "Our Ju-52s will fly the corridor. The skies are ours." But they both know the truth. The Russian winter has grounded half the fleet already, and Stalingrad's anti-aircraft guns light up the night like a deadly fireworks show. Back in the dugout, Paulus rubs his temples. Outside, the bombardment intensifies. You can feel the concussions rattling the timbers overhead, dirt sifting down like grim confetti. Soldiers of the 295th Infantry Division huddle in their foxholes, fingers numb on Mauser rifles, whispering prayers to a god who seems distant. Private Hans Weber, a baker from Munich before the war, clutches his Stahlhelm tighter as a Katyusha rocket screams overhead. Stalin's organ, they call it, unleashing hell in fiery barrages. "Verdammt," he mutters to his comrade. "This isn't fighting. It's dying in the cold." By dawn, the encirclement closes. Soviet tanks from the 5th Tank Army and 21st Army punch through the Romanian 3rd and 4th Armies like a hot knife through butter. The 6th Army's 20-mile corridor to the rear snaps shut, trapping Paulus's men in a pocket 50 miles wide. Panic ripples through the ranks, not outright rout, but the slow poison of isolation. Radios buzz with desperate calls. "Enemy closing the gap at Serafimovich. Artillery low on shells." Paulus paces, weighing options. A breakout now while the ring is thin could save them. Head west to link with the 4th Panzer Army. But orders from Hitler bind him like chains. Stand fast, relief is coming. In Berlin, Hitler pores over reports. His trembling hand, early signs of Parkinson's, marking the map with false certainty. He dismisses advisers who whisper of overextension, of the Wehrmacht's logistical nightmare stretching from the Atlantic to the Urals. "Stalingrad will be ours by Christmas," he declares, eyes wild. Yet in that moment, the overlooked mistake takes root. Not a grand blunder like invading Russia, but this quiet insistence on holding a ruined city at any price. No flexibility for the field commander, no acknowledgement of the human cost. The 6th Army, pride of the Reich, becomes a pawn in a delusion. As the sun rises blood-red over the snow, the first snowflakes mix with ash from burning vehicles. Paulus stares out from the dugout's slit window. The world a white void broken by muzzle flashes. The trap is sprung, and escape slips further away with every hour. What choices will he make next, bound by a leader's iron will? If you're gripped by these turning points of history, hit that subscribe button to catch the rest. The noose tightens, but the real test of will is just beginning. December 1942. The Kessel, the Cauldron, Stalingrad Pocket, Soviet Union. The snow falls heavier now, blanketing the trenches in a deceptive hush that masks the chaos brewing beneath. Inside the 6th Army's makeshift headquarters, burrowed into the ruins of a bombed-out factory on the city's western edge, the air hangs heavy with the tang of cordite and freezing dampness. General Friedrich Paulus stands rigid by the map, his gloved fingers tracing the tightening Soviet lines like a man reading his own obituary. The pocket measures barely 30 miles across at its widest, a shrinking noose of 22 divisions, some 290 Uzuzuzaren men, including stragglers from the shattered Romanian units, crammed into a frozen hell. Outside, the wind carries the distant wail of Il-2 Sturmovik ground attack planes, their cannons stitching the earth with fire as they strafe German supply convoys trying to snake in from the west. You can almost taste the desperation in the radio room, where operators hunch over their sets, the Enigma machines whirring like mechanical hearts on the brink of failure. Static crackles as another report filters in from the 16th Panzer Division's outposts. Soviet probes at the northern perimeter, T-34s with infantry support. Our PZKPFW-3s are low on fuel. Request priority airdrop. Paulus nods to his operations officer, Colonel Wilhelm Adam, who scribbles the order. But fuel, ammunition, food, all hinge on the Luftwaffe's promise. A lifeline stretched thin across 200 miles of enemy skies. In the forward positions, Lieutenant Karl Becker of the 44th Infantry Division peers through his binoculars from a shattered apartment block. The Volga River, a grey scar to the east, choked with ice floes and the hulks of sunken barges. His men, faces blackened with frostbite's early kiss, huddle around a sputtering field stove, rationing ersatz coffee that tastes like boiled dirt. "The Ivans are massing artillery," Becker mutters to his sergeant, a grizzled veteran named Fritz from the Ruhr Valley. Shells whistle overhead. Soviet 150mm howitzers from the 64th Army, exploding in geysers of snow and mud that bury foxholes alive. One blast nearby sends a soldier sprawling, his leg mangled by shrapnel from a 76mm round. Becker drags him back, applying a tourniquet with shaking hands. The man screams, swallowed by the gale. Back at HQ, Paulus convenes his corps commanders via field telephone, their voices tinny and laced with exhaustion. General Hans Huber of the 14th Panzer Corps argues fiercely, "We must attempt a breakout now, while the ring is porous. Link with Field Marshal Manstein's Army Group Don. It's our only chance." Hube's Tigers and Panthers, the pride of the Panzer Division, sit idle for lack of diesel, their crews scavenging parts from wrecked Soviet KV-1s. Paulus listens, his jaw set, knowing the terrain favors the attackers. Open steppes ideal for Zhukov's tank swarms, while the Germans are funneled into kill zones. The decision weighs on him like the sub-zero cold, seeping through his greatcoat. He drafts the urgent wire to OKH, Army High Command, encoded and dispatched at 1400 hours. Encirclement complete, supplies critical. Propose immediate withdrawal westward to avoid annihilation. Paulus. The message races through the ether, past Luftwaffe U-88 fighters escorting the first supply planes, their Merlin engines droning against the roar of Yak-1 interceptors. Göring's flyers manage a handful of sorties that day, 100 tons unloaded at the rough airstrip near Gumrak, but it's a drop in the ocean. Crates of bread and bullets tumble from bomb bays, some bursting open in the snow, drawing starving horses and desperate foragers. In the Wolf's Lair, the bunker complex reeks of wet concrete and Hitler's chain-smoked cigars. The Führer, paced by his Alsatian blondie, slams his fist on the oak table as the decoded message arrives. "Break out! This is the moment to strike harder!" he bellows, his voice echoing off the reinforced walls. General Alfred Jodl, chief of the Wehrmacht operations staff, shifts uncomfortably, his monocle glinting under the harsh lights. "Mein Führer, the 6th Army's fuel reserves are at 10%. A breakout risks heavy losses, but holding." Hitler cuts him off, turning to Göring, who lounges in a chair, medal-bedecked uniform straining at the seams. "Hermann, your assurance, the air bridge, it will hold, yes?" Göring swells with bravado, pounding his chest. "Absolutely. The Luftwaffe can deliver 500 tons daily, 700 if we push. Our He-111s and Ju-52s will fly day and night. The Bolsheviks won't touch them." But privately, Luftwaffe intelligence reports paint a grim picture. Soviet airfields at Saratov bristle with 900 fighters, and winter gales ground half the transports. Hitler, eyes blazing with that messianic fire, dictates the reply. No retreat. "The 6th Army will stand and fight. Stalingrad is not lost. It will be the turning point. Relief forces under Manstein will break the encirclement within 10 days. Paulus, you are forbidden to evacuate. Victory demands sacrifice." The order arrives at Paulus's HQ as dusk falls, the sky bruising purple over the pocket. He reads it aloud to Schmidt, his chief of staff, who curses under his breath. "This is madness. We're rats in a trap and he's locking the door." Paulus crumples the paper, staring at the flickering field telephone. Outside, the Soviet barrage resumes. 8th Air Army's guns walking their fire across the perimeter, collapsing bunkers and igniting ammo dumps in chains of orange blooms. In the infantry lines, Private Hans Weber, the Munich baker, shares his last crust with a wounded comrade, their breaths mingling in white plumes. "They say the Führer won't let us pull back," Weber whispers, fear etching his young face. "What if the Reds close in tighter?" By nightfall, the first major Soviet assault hammers the southern sector. Elements of the 2nd Guards Army, spearheaded by IS-2 heavy tanks, behemoths with 120 T-Nituse guns that punch through any German armor, crash against the 29th Motorized Division. MG-42 machine guns chatter in response, their 200 rounds per minute tearing into the assault waves, but the line buckles. German counterattacks with Stuggy 3 assault guns stall in the drifts, engines freezing solid. Casualties mount. 5. In the first 48 hours post-encirclement. Medics overwhelmed in aid stations, lit by carbide lamps, amputating limbs with saws dulled by the cold. Paulus tours the front under cover of darkness, his staff car bouncing over rutted tracks, dodging flares that illuminate the nightmare like stage lights. He speaks to the men, quiet words of resolve, but his eyes betray the fracture. Hitler's mistake festers here, not in grand strategy, but in this rigid denial of reality, chaining a commander to a symbol, ignoring the frostbitten feet, the empty magazines, the whispers of mutiny. The air bridge creaks under its load, planes falling to flak and fighters, their crews parachuting into no man's land. As the moon hangs low, casting long shadows over the Volga's icy banks, a lone Messerschmitt Bf 109 limps back from a supply run, trailing smoke. The pocket holds for now, but the cold gnaws deeper, and with it, the doubt. How long before the unbreakable line cracks from within? January 1943, the shrinking cauldron, Stalingrad pocket, Soviet Union. The wind screams across the pocket like a banshee, carrying the acrid bite of unburied dead and the ceaseless thud of Soviet artillery. It's mid-January now, and the Kessel has contracted to a ragged circle just 15 miles across, a festering wound in the steppe, where 200,000 Germans, down from the encirclement's head count, through disease, desertion, and the reaper's toll, claw for survival. In the bowels of the Univermag department store ruins, repurposed as Paulus's command post, the air reeks of gangrene and machine oil. Flickering lanterns cast jittery shadows on walls pocked by shrapnel, while orderlies ferry the wounded on makeshift sleds, their moans a grim underscore to the map briefings. General Friedrich Paulus, his cheeks hollowed to the bone, his once crisp uniform now a threadbare shroud, pores over the latest reconnaissance. The Soviet ring, forged by Zhukov's 1st Guards Army to the north and Chuikov's 62nd holding the Volga line, pulses with activity. Endless columns of T-3485s rumbling into position, their sloped armor shrugging off the few remaining German 80-80mm flak guns, repurposed as anti-tank barricades. Paulus's eyes, rimmed with exhaustion, fix on a faint pencil line marking the external relief effort, Operation Winter Storm, led by Field Marshal Erich von Manstein's Army Group Don. Manstein's panzers are 30 miles out, he murmurs to General Schmidt, whose face is a mask of frost-induced cracks. If they punch through at the Mishkova River, we link up. But our fuel... God, the fuel. Outside, in the skeletal remains of factory districts, the Luftwaffe's air bridge groans under impossible strain. Ju-52 transports, dubbed Iron Annies by their crews, circle the Gumrak airfield like vultures, dodging swarms of Soviet La-5 fighters that streak from hidden bases. One pilot, Oberleutnant Hans-Ulrich Rudel, the Stuka ace-turned-supply hauler, banks his machine hard, engines straining against icing as flak bursts bloom around him. "Bandits at 3 o'clock!" his gunner shouts over the intercom, the twin 13mm machine guns chattering back. Rudel's plane unloads its 2 tons of bread, morphine, and 20mm shells onto the cratered strip, but half the cargo scatters into the snow, scavenged by wolves or worse, Soviet partisans slipping through the lines. Daily totals: a pathetic 70 tons on good days. When the weather allows, Göring's boast of 300 has become a cruel joke, with 488 aircraft lost since November, their pilots freezing in Siberian gulags. You feel the desperation in the ranks, where soldiers of the 76th Infantry Division gnaw on boot leather and horseflesh stewed over open fires. Private Hans Weber, his fingers blackened stubs from frostbite, huddles in a basement with his squad, the walls weeping icy condensation. A Soviet probe that morning, infantry from the 24th Army supported by Su-152 tank destroyers, their 152 mm howitzers belching fire, had overrun a neighboring platoon. Weber's Mauser K98K clicks empty as he fires into the smoke, the recoil jarring his numb arms. "Fall back to the secondary line!" Lieutenant Becker bellows, his voice raw from shouting orders over the din. They retreat through rubble-choked streets, dragging a machine gun nest's MG-42, its barrel glowing from sustained fire. Bodies litter the snow, German and Russian alike, twisted in eternal freeze frames of agony. At the forward edge, near the southern perimeter, the 17th Panzer Division's remnants mount a desperate push to meet Manstein's relief column. Colonel Helmut von der Chevalerie, commanding the spearhead, urges his men forward in captured T-34s, their diesel fumes mingling with the exhaust of sputtering Panzer fours. "For the fatherland, break the ring!" he rallies, but the advance stalls in a blizzard, tracks mired in drifts, while Soviet 57th Army counterattacks with Katyusha rockets, turning the plain into a cauldron of flame and screams. Manstein's XXXX8 Panzer Corps, with its MK-Fees and a handful of Tigers, claws to within 25 miles of the pocket by January 16th, clashing in furious tank duels at Verkhnechumsky. Elephant Ferdinand tank destroyers, 80mm guns mounted on Porsche chassis, pulverized T-34s at 2,000 yards, but Soviet numbers overwhelm. 200 tanks against Manstein's 150, fuel siphoned from every source, including drained aircraft tanks. In the Wolf's Lair, Hitler rages in the Situation Room, maps strewn like fallen leaves under the glare of overhead bulbs. His hand shakes as he jabs at the chart, veins bulging in his neck. Manstein must succeed. Tell him to press harder, no hesitation. General Walter Wenck, operations chief, interjects cautiously. "Mein Führer, the Don front is cracking elsewhere. If we divert more from Army Group A in the Caucasus..." Hitler whirls, spittle flying. "The Caucasus oil is secure. Stalingrad is the key. Paulus holds, Manstein relieves. Göring, your damned flyers, double the sorties." The Reichsmarschall, sweating despite the chill, nods vigorously, but his staff knows the truth. Air crews mutinying from fatigue. He-111 bombers iced shut on runways from Kallac to Berlin. The reply cables snap back to Paulus. "Hold position, relief imminent." Führer confident in victory. But doubt festers, like the typhus sweeping the pocket's hospitals. 40,000 cases, surgeons operating without anesthesia, limbs piled like cordwood. Paulus, gaunt and coughing, convenes a midnight council in the Univermag sublevels. Generals Hoob and Strecker, their faces etched with hunger, plead, "Manstein's window is closing. We push south now, or we're done." Paulus hesitates. The weight of 90,000 casualties since the trap closed, pressing on him. He authorizes a limited breakout feint, the 6th Panzer Division probing toward the Mishkova, but Hitler's edict chains them. No full withdrawal, no risk to the fortress. By January 23rd, Manstein's thrust falters. Soviet reinforcements, Rokossovsky's Don front, massing 400, Dozer men and 6 Idoaro guns slam into the relief force's flanks. Panzers burn in the snow, their crews bailing out to trudge back under Il-2 strafing runs, cannons raking like divine judgment. Manstein signals retreat, his army bloodied but intact, leaving the 6th Army to its fate. The news hits Paulus like a gut punch. Radios fall silent, save for the Soviet propaganda broadcast blaring from loudspeakers. "Surrender and live. Paulus, your men are dying for nothing." In the lines, Weber collapses in his foxhole, fever raging, as another barrage, 1,000 shells per hour from the Soviet 16th Air Army's artillery, rains down. Becker covers him with a tattered blanket, whispering, "Hang on, lad, relief's coming." But the lie tastes bitter. Hitler's overlooked mistake, that iron refusal to yield ground, to let commanders adapt, has turned a tactical pocket into a grave. Supplies dwindle to 50 grams of bread per man daily, horses slaughtered en masse, their hides boiled for soup. Desertions spike. shadows slipping east toward the Volga, trading rifles for promises of bread. As the temperature plummets to -30, the pocket's defenders stare into the void. Manstein's failure seals the doom, but whispers of capitulation stir in the dark. Will Paulus defy the Führer at last, or drag his army into oblivion? The cold claims another 1,000 that night, silent sentinels in the snow. February 1943, the final squeeze, Stalingrad pocket, Soviet Union. The frost bites deeper into the bones of the trapped men, turning the pocket into a tomb of ice and despair. By early February, the Kessel has withered to a mere 5 miles across, a ragged scar on the steppe where the remnants of the Sixth Army, now fewer than 150, 1,000 souls ravaged by starvation, scurvy, and the relentless Soviet anvil, hunker in the skeletal ruins of Stalingrad's industrial heart. In the sub-basement of the Univermag, Paulus's command post, the air is a choking stew of sweat, pus from infected wounds, and the metallic tang of blood. Dim bulbs swing from frayed wires, casting grotesque shadows on the faces of staff officers whose eyes gleam with the hollow stare of the damned. Outside, the wind howls through the bombed-out chimneys, carrying the muffled boom of Soviet heavy artillery, 203mm howitzers from the 7th Artillery Division, pounding the perimeter like the heartbeat of an angry god. General Friedrich Paulus slumps in a splintered chair, his greatcoat draped over shoulders that seem too frail to bear the weight of command. Typhus has claimed his color, leaving him pale as the snow drifting through shell holes. He traces the latest intelligence overlay on the map. Soviet forces under General Konstantin Rokossovsky's Don Front encircle them completely, with the 65th Army to the west and the 21st to the south, their lines bristling with 500 guns and over 500 Katyusha launchers. "The air bridge is collapsing," Paulus rasps to General Schmidt, his voice a dry whisper amid the coughs echoing from the adjacent sick bay. Only 40 tons arrive on the best days now, Luftwaffe losses mounting to over 500 aircraft since the encirclement, their wrecks littering the fields like broken toys. Goering's transports, Ju-52s and He-111s, barely evade the Soviet Yakovlev Yak-9 fighters swarming from forward bases, their pilots whispering mutiny over the radio. You can sense the fracture in the lines, where the 94th Infantry Division clings to the Mamayev-Kurgan Heights, the hill that's claimed more lives than any trench. Lieutenant Karl Becker, promoted in the chaos after his company commander's shrapnel death, leads a patrol through the frozen sewers, the stench of sewage and rot clinging to their woolen scarves. His men, ghosts in tattered Feldgrau, Stahlhelms dented from near misses, grip their carabiner 98Ks with hands swollen from edema. "Quiet!" Becker hisses as they emerge into a moonlit crater, the silence broken only by the distant crackle of a Soviet field phone. Suddenly, a flare pops overhead, bathing them in stark white light. Machine gun fire erupts from a hidden bunker, Soviet PPSH-41 submachine guns spitting 900 rounds a minute. Private Hans Weber, barely able to stand, fires blindly, his bolt-action rifle jamming in the cold. A burst catches him in the shoulder, spinning him into the snow, blood blooming dark against the white. Becker hauls him back, the patrol scattering into the ruins as mortars whistle down. 82mm rounds cratering the earth and burying 2 more under rubble. Back at HQ, the field telephone jangles with reports from the Panzer remnants. General Hermann Hoth's IV Army Corps, what's left of it, mounts a futile spoiling attack in the south. Stug 3 assault guns, rumbling forward with skeletal crews, their 75mm guns barking at shadows. But Soviet IS-2 heavies counter, their 122mm projectiles slamming through armor like thunderbolts, leaving burning hulks that light the night. Hoth's signal crackles through. Perimeter breached at Pitomnik, enemy infantry infiltrating. Recommend immediate evacuation of wounded. Paulus nods wearily, authorizing horse-drawn sleds to ferry the 30 Zoonzer and frostbite cases to the last airstrip. But the field is a slaughter pen. Il-2 Sturmovix diving low, their 30-centimeter cannons shredding columns, medics falling with their charges. In the wolf's lair, the bunker air grows thicker with tension, Hitler's rants echoing off the concrete like thunder in a barrel. He paces the map room, his left arm twitching uncontrollably as aides, Keitel and Jodl, hunch over dispatches from the front. The Führer's face, sallow under the fluorescent glare, twists in fury at the latest from Manstein. Relief impossible, the Don front too strong. Paulus is weak, Hitler snarls, slamming a report onto the table. He must counterattack, use the reserves. The 6th Army has 100 tanks operational. But it's a lie born of delusion. Fuel is gone, tracks frozen, crews too weak to fight. General Heinz Guderian, summoned from retirement, stands in the corner, his monocle fogged, biting back words of warning. Mein Führer, the army is starving. Surrender terms could save lives. Hitler whirls, eyes bulging. Surrender? Never. Stalingrad is a fortress. Hold or die. Tell Paulus to fight to the last man. Goering, reinforce the airlift. Goering, his uniform unbuttoned against the bunker's stuffy heat, blusters through cigar smoke. The Reich will not abandon its heroes. Our FW-200 Condors will bomb the Soviet rear, disrupt their supply. But the reality bites. Luftwaffe strength is shattered. Squadrons down to 20% readiness, crews parachuting into captivity rather than face another iced-over sortie. Hitler's order flies back via Enigma. No capitulation. Fight on. Promotion to Field Marshal if you hold. The message arrives as Paulus inspects the aid station, where surgeons saw off gangrenous limbs by lantern light, screams mingling with the whine of generators. He reads it alone, the promotion a hollow crown, Field Marshal, yet trapped in a coffin of snow. Doubt spreads like gangrene through the ranks. In the northern sector, the 113th Infantry Division's officers convene in a bombed-out bakery, their breaths fogging the air as they debate. Colonel Max Freiherr von Edelsheim, a Prussian aristocrat with a scarred cheek from Verdun, leans forward. The Führer's blind. We've lost 40 Suzerain to the cold alone this month. If we break out piecemeal, small groups slipping west, we save some. But loyalty binds them. Whispers of treason could mean a bullet from the rear. Soviet loudspeakers blare day and night. Paulus, your men eat rats while you dine on rations. Surrender. Join the living. Desertions surge. 500 a day now, shadows vanishing into the steppe, some turning coats for a loaf of black bread. Paulus returns to the map, authorizing demolitions of heavy equipment. Tigers and Pak-40 anti-tank guns spiked, their breeches welded shut to deny the enemy. The airfield at Gumrak falls on February 4th, Soviet commandos overrunning it in a blizzard, capturing 20 Ju-52s intact. Evacuations halt. Only the boldest pilots land on makeshift strips, engines screaming as they touch down amid shell fire, loading 20 officers per flight before roaring off into the storm. Hube escapes that way, his mechanical hand, lost in Poland, clutching a satchel of maps. But the rank and file are abandoned. By mid-February, the pocket splits into 3 isolated pockets: the factory district, the city center, and the southern tip. Soviet assaults intensify, Rodion Malinovsky's 2nd Guards Army crashing through the 71st Infantry Division with flamethrower teams, clearing cellars room by room. MG-42 nests fall silent, out of ammo, their gunners clubbing with rifle butts until bayonets end it. Weber, bandaged and delirious, stumbles through the chaos with Becker, scavenging a frozen corpse for boots. "It's over, sir," he gasps, collapsing against a wall. Becker nods, tears freezing on his lashes. The Führer forgot us here, chained to ruins for his pride. Paulus, promoted yet unbowed, stares at the radio as Rokossovsky's envoy, a white flag fluttering from a staff car, approaches under truce. Terms offered: honorable surrender, medical aid, return of officers. Hitler's voice crackles one last time. No quarter! Fight to the end. But in the dead of night, as another one, Maunu succumbed to the freeze. Paulus weighs the abyss. The army teeters on the brink. Will he break the chain, or let delusion claim them all? The steppe waits, silent and unforgiving. February 2nd, 1943. The ruins of central Stalingrad, Soviet Union. The dawn breaks grey and merciless over the shattered husk of the city. The air thick with the frozen reek of decay and cordite, as if the Volga itself exhales the breath of the dying. Snowflakes swirl like ash from a dying fire, settling on the barricades where the last remnants of the Sixth Army cling to life. In the crumbling bowels of the Univermag department store, Field Marshal now, Friedrich Paulus, sits at a makeshift desk fashioned from a shattered display case, his hands trembling not from the cold but from the finality etching into his soul. The room, lit by a single sputtering lantern, echoes with the distant rumble of Soviet T-34 engines idling on the perimeter, their crews brewing tea in the comparative warmth of idling cabs. Outside, the wind carries the faint, eerie silence of a battlefield gone quiet. No more thunder of 150 mm howitzers from Rokossovsky's Don Front. No staccato bursts from PPSH-41s. Just the creak of frost-split timbers and the occasional cough from the wounded stacked like cordwood in the corridors. Paulus stares at the radio, its enigma dials frozen in place, the last message from Hitler a ghost in his mind. Capitulation is out of the question. The troops must continue to fight. But the fight is bled dry. The pocket, once a sprawling trap, has fractured into isolated knots of resistance, 3 ragged islands amid the rubble. The factory district under General Karl Strecker, the city centre where Paulus holds, and the southern tip gripped by General Otto Korff's 295th Infantry Division. Fewer than 91 Uderzerun men remain combat effective, their bodies hollowed by 120 days of siege, rations reduced to sawdust bread and watery gruel from boiled bones. Typhus and dysentery ravage the ranks, medics out of morphine, performing amputations with rusted bayonets under the flicker of carbide lamps. You can almost hear the collective sigh of exhaustion, the way breaths hang in the chill like unspoken prayers for release. In the northern pocket, General Strecker paces his command post in a gutted tractor works, his staff huddled around a field stove fueled by splintered crates. Reports trickle in via runners. Ghostly figures slipping through sewer grates and shell craters. Soviet 66th Army advancing on our left. No ammo for the MG-42s. Bayonets only. Strecker's panzer remnants, a handful of immobilized Panzer IIIs with 50mm guns spiked to prevent capture, sit as silent sentinels. He radios Paulus one last time, the connection hissing like a serpent. Fuel exhausted. Men at breaking point. Permission to cease resistance? Paulus, his voice a hollow echo over the line, grants it. The end comes for all pockets simultaneously. Preserve what lives we can. Across the lines, Lieutenant Karl Becker crouches in a basement redoubt with his depleted platoon from the 44th Infantry Division, the walls scarred by direct hits from Su-85 tank destroyers. Private Hans Weber, his shoulder wound festering under a filthy bandage, leans against a pillar, eyes glassy with fever. "Sir, the shooting stopped," Weber whispers, his voice barely cutting the hush. Becker peers through a loophole, seeing white flags fluttering from shattered windows, improvised from bedsheets stained with blood. Soviet infantry, bundled in sheepskin coats, advance cautiously, their Mosin Nagant rifles slung, calling out in broken German, "Kamerad, no shoot!" Becker lowers his carabiner 98K, the weight of it suddenly unbearable. "It's over," he mutters, helping Weber to his feet. They stumble out into the open, hands raised, the snow crunching under boots worn to rags. Soviet soldiers surround them, faces weathered but not unkind, offering cigarettes and hot kasha from mess tins. For a moment, the war feels distant, reduced to shared humanity in the freeze. At 0700 hours, Paulus emerges from the Univermag, his greatcoat buttoned tight against the wind, flanked by General Schmidt and a small entourage. A Soviet staff car, a Gaze 11 painted drab olive, pulls up under truce flags, its engine purring softly. Major General Ivan Burmakov, Rokossovsky's representative, steps out, saluting crisply. "Field Marshal Paulus?" General Rokossovsky offers terms. "Unconditional surrender. Your men will receive medical care, food, and repatriation for the wounded." Paulus nods, the promotion's irony bitter on his tongue. Hitler's last gambit, a field marshal's baton to a man yielding an army. He signs the capitulation document in the car's back seat, the pen scratching like claws on his conscience. At 0800, the order broadcasts across the pockets, "Cease fire! Surrender to preserve lives." Radios fall silent, white flags bloom like surrender's flowers across the ruins. In Berlin's Wolf's Lair, the news shatters like glass under a boot. Hitler, roused from a midday nap, receives the wire in the Führer bunker, his face draining to the color of putty. "Paulus, that coward, promoted to field marshal, and he surrenders?" he roars, sweeping maps from the table, his voice cracking with rage. General Keitel stands frozen, his iron cross glinting dully, while Jodl adjusts his glasses, murmuring, "Mein Führer, the army was doomed. No fuel, no relief. Your orders." Hitler rounds on him, eyes wild. "My orders. Stalingrad was to be held. This is treason. Goering, the Luftwaffe failed. The flanks were weak because of those incompetent Romanians. But deep down, the overlooked mistake gnaws, that rigid decree in November, forbidding withdrawal, chaining Paulus to a symbol over strategy. No breakout when the ring was thin, no adaptation to the Soviet tide. The Sixth Army, 250,000 strong at the encirclement, reduced to ghosts, 91,000 prisoners. But half would perish in the march to captivity, another 45,000 in the gulags from starvation and exposure. The surrender unfolds in grim procession. Columns of Germans, officers first, then enlisted, file out under guard, their Stahlhelms collected in piles, Mausers stacked like firewood. Weber staggers in the line, Becker supporting him, as Soviet NKVD troops herd them westward toward Beketovka camps. The steppe stretches endless, a white void where the wind whips faces raw, feet bleeding through paper-thin soles. "Keep moving!" a Soviet sergeant barks, prodding with a PPS butt. Thousands collapse en route, bodies left for the ravens, the cold claiming more than bullets ever did. Paulus, driven away in a captured Mercedes, glances back at the city, a charnel house of twisted steel and frozen dead, the Volga mocking them with its icy flow. In the aftermath, Stalingrad stands as the Reich's wound, unhealed. Hitler demotes surrender's taint, purging defeatists, but the loss ripples, morale cracks on the Eastern Front, resources diverted from the Atlantic Wall. Paulus, interrogated in Moscow, testifies to the folly, how one man's delusion doomed an army, turning tactical hubris into strategic catastrophe. The steppe, silent now, buries its secrets under fresh snow, a testament to choices made in dugouts and bunkers, where pride outlasted powder and steel. The war grinds on, but Stalingrad's shadow lengthens, a grave for the overlooked truth. Flexibility lost is an army forsaken.